AITA for letting my father-in-law drink the spiked cocktail meant for me? My name is Mason Carter. I am 32 years old, and I am a freelance photographer. I built my business from the ground up. Weddings, wildlife, magazine features, the kind of work that pays well if you are competent, and I am. But for my in-laws, especially Eleanor, my profession was never enough. My passion for photography was a constant source of irritation for her husband, Richard, during our family dinners, and he never tried to hide his contempt. He was an investment banker, the kind to measure success in square footage and stock portfolios. Every Sunday dinner at their sprawling home unfolded the same way. Eleanor would carefully dote on her daughter, while Richard interrogated me about my finances. My wife, Sarah, would squeeze my hand under the table, a silent apology for her parents. That week, I had been on assignment in Montana, photographing bison for a national publication and wading through knee-deep snow. I was exhausted, but Sarah insisted that we not miss her mother's birthday dinner. Just a few hours, she had promised. I should have listened to the gut feeling twisting in my stomach when Eleanor cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes darting away as she handed me that glass, a slight tremble in her fingers as she said, "I made this especially for you." Something was off, but I was far from imagining to what extent. Sarah and I met 6 years ago at a gallery exhibition where my work was featured. She was finishing her master's degree in environmental science, and I was just starting to make a name for myself. We hit it off immediately. She understood my need to capture the world through a lens, and I admired her passion for protecting that world. Her parents, on the other hand, were a different story. From our very first meeting, Richard made it clear he had hoped for better for his daughter. A man with an office, a retirement plan, a company car, someone exactly like him. Eleanor was more subtle. She would compliment my photos while asking when I planned to settle down into a stable job. She invited me to family events only to introduce me as the photographer, never as her son-in-law. For years, I tried to win them over. I brought good wine to dinner, showed them my publications, and mentioned prestigious clients. Nothing worked. They continued to see me as a temporary passenger in their daughter's life, a whim she would eventually outgrow. Last Christmas, I overheard Eleanor on the phone. Sarah could have married Jacob, an orthopedic surgeon from a good family, but she chose the creative. The pause before the word creative made it sound like a disease. Richard, for his part, was more direct. When Sarah and I announced that we were trying for a baby, he pulled me aside. "A child? That costs a lot of money, son. Think about getting a real job before bringing one into the world." I never told Sarah any of this. She loved her parents despite their flaws, and I didn't want to force her to choose. So I smiled, shook Richard's hand, complimented Eleanor's cooking, and kept my thoughts to myself. But there were signs I should have taken more seriously. The way Eleanor asked Sarah to help her in the kitchen every time I talked about a successful project, the family photos where I was accidentally cropped out, the time Richard suggested therapy for Sarah's impulsive decisions while looking me right in the eye. I ignored it all, thinking time would eventually make them accept me. I was wrong. That Friday, the day of Eleanor's birthday, I returned from Montana, my face weathered by the cold and a memory card full of images that would pay our rent for 3 months. I was exhausted, but I showered, put on a decent shirt, and we drove to her parents' place, a large colonial house in an upscale neighborhood. Dinner started as usual. Richard bragged about a recent deal. Eleanor fussed over the table settings. Sarah's brother, Mark, and his wife, Jessica, made polite conversation. As for me, I sipped a beer while counting the minutes. After the main course, Eleanor announced she had prepared her famous sangria for dessert. She disappeared into the kitchen, and I offered to help her carry the glasses. That was when I saw it. 2 glasses were set apart from the others. As I walked in, I caught Eleanor pouring something from a small vial into one of them. It wasn't an ingredient or a flavoring. It was a colorless, odorless liquid. She quickly put the vial away as soon as she heard me. "Oh, Mason, I've got it," she said, her voice too cheerful. "This one is for you. A special recipe for my favorite son-in-law." My throat tightened. The glass had a slight film on the surface, visible under the light. "Let me help you carry all this," I said, taking the 2 glasses she had prepared. In the dining room, Richard was checking his phone without even looking up. "Sangria, sir." I placed the tampered-with glass in front of him. I watched him drink it, claiming that I preferred water with dessert. 45 minutes later, Richard was pale, sweating, and rushing to the bathroom. The violent sounds coming from behind the closed door echoed through the house. Eleanor's face lost all its color when she realized what had happened. Her eyes met mine across the table, and in that instant, I knew two things with absolute certainty. My mother-in-law had tried to spike my drink, and she knew that I knew. I didn't react. I didn't confront her. I simply ate my chocolate cake while Sarah ran to check on her father. In the ensuing chaos, with Richard talking about food poisoning and Eleanor babbling about questionable shellfish, I discreetly slipped the untouched glass, the one meant for me, into my camera bag. Something had changed in me. The anger I felt wasn't burning or explosive. It was cold, methodical. I wasn't going to let this slide, but I wasn't going to fight by their rules, either. I was going to show them exactly who they were. The following Monday, I brought the glass to a friend, David, a former client who ran a toxicology lab. Personal or professional? He asked. Family business, I replied. 3 days later, he called me back. Mason, there were strong sedatives in this glass. Nothing lethal, but enough to knock someone out for hours, maybe even cause some memory loss. Where did you get this? I thanked him and asked for a written report. I didn't answer his question. That evening, I told Sarah I wanted to avoid family dinners for a while, claiming I needed to focus on an upcoming exhibition. She was disappointed but understanding. I didn't tell her about the test results. Not yet. I needed more evidence. Over the next 2 weeks, I conducted my own quiet investigation. Eleanor had 3 active prescriptions for a powerful anxiety medication from 3 different doctors. She had been obtaining far more than her prescribed doses for years. There were also rumors around their social circle, strange behavior at a neighbor's party, accusations of missing jewelry at the country club, stories her family had done everything they could to hush up. I compiled everything and waited for the right moment. It came when Sarah mentioned that her mother wanted some new photos for her social media profiles. She specifically asked if you could take them, she said, surprised. I agreed. The following Saturday, I arrived at their house alone, camera bag in one hand and a sealed envelope in the other. Eleanor was waiting for me, carefully dressed, her makeup flawless. Richard is at the office, she explained. Before we begin, I said calmly, I think you should see this. I handed her the envelope containing the toxicology report along with copies of her multiple prescriptions. Her hands shook as she read. This is absurd, she murmured. I would never do that. We both know what happened. I cut in, and I know why. Her face hardened. You are not good enough for my daughter. You never will be. A man should offer security, not just pictures. And drugging your daughter's husband is offering security? I replied calmly. I didn't want to hurt you, she shot back sharply. Just make you a little sick. Make you miss that stupid exhibition you've been talking about for months. Show Sarah that you are unreliable. I let the silence hang, then finally said, Here is what's going to happen. You are going to tell Richard what you did. Then, you are both going to start treating me with respect. Not because you've changed your mind about me, but because the alternative is Sarah finding out who her parents really are. Eleanor laughed, but it was a hollow sound. She will never believe you over us. I picked up my camera bag. Maybe not, but she will believe the lab report, the prescriptions, and the neighbors you've alienated. Are you willing to risk your relationship with your daughter on that? I left without taking a single photo. That evening, Eleanor called Sarah in tears, claiming I had acted inappropriately during our planned photo shoot, that I had been hostile and threatening. When Sarah confronted me, I could no longer hide the truth. I showed her everything. The toxicology report, the prescriptions, even messages from her mother that had become increasingly hostile over the years. My mother would never do that, she kept repeating, but her voice lacked conviction. The next day, she went to confront her parents. I wasn't there, but when she returned, her eyes were red from crying. My father says this is all a misunderstanding, she said softly, that you're trying to divide our family because you're insecure about your career. I simply nodded. I had expected that. And what do you think? I asked. She didn't answer. She slipped into bed and turned her back to me. I had stood my ground, but I had fallen deeper into their trap. I had become the villain of their story, and they had managed to sow doubt in the heart of the only person who truly mattered to me. For weeks, Sarah barely spoke to me. She went to her parents' house alone and would come back with red eyes, full full of new uncertainties. I buried myself in work, spending long hours in my darkroom, waiting for the storm to pass. Then, a package arrived in my name. No return address, just my first name scribbled on top in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "You should see this. Jessica." The drive contained video files, recordings from the security cameras at Richard and Eleanor's house. The timestamps matched the night of the dinner. You could see Eleanor in the kitchen, clearly adding something to a glass. You could see me walk in and take the glasses. You could see Richard drink the one that had been intended for me. But there was more. There was footage from after we left, where Eleanor was yelling at Richard, blaming him for drinking the wrong glass. Richard yelled back, "This isn't the first time you've pulled a stunt like this." I watched the video 3 times to process what I was seeing. It wasn't just confirmation of Eleanor's act, but proof of a pattern of recurring behavior, and that Richard knew all about it. Another file was dated 2 days after the dinner. Eleanor and Richard were arguing in the living room about me. "He knows what you did," Richard said. "So what?" Eleanor replied. "It's his word against mine. Sarah will never choose him over us. And if she does, then she's not the daughter I raised." She added coldly, "Don't worry. I've already started talking to her about their marital problems. I'm planting seeds. By the time I'm done, she'll be asking for a divorce, thinking it was her own idea." I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. This wasn't just against me. It was a systematic plan to control Sarah's life, to isolate her from anyone who didn't fit their vision, and they had been doing it for years. I called Jessica immediately. "Why did you send me this?" "Because they did the same thing to me when I married Mark," she said calmly. "They tried to split us up for 2 years. Said I wasn't good enough. It almost worked. Why didn't you tell us?" "Mark doesn't know," she confessed. "He worships his father. He believes everything he says. I tried to tell him, but he thinks I'm being paranoid. I couldn't let them do this to you too." The next day, I received a text from Richard. "We should talk, man to man, without the women." I met him at his country club. He was waiting for me in a private lounge, a glass of bourbon in his hand. "Mason," he began, "families are complicated. My wife can be difficult, protective, but she means well. Is secretly drugging someone meaning well?" I asked. He waved his hand dismissively. "A misunderstanding. Eleanor takes medication for her anxiety. She must have mixed up the glasses." "I have the surveillance videos, Richard." His face changed instantly, becoming hard and calculating. "What do you want? Money? Is that the goal? I always knew you married Sarah for financial reasons. I just want you to leave us alone," I said. "Stop trying to convince Sarah that I'm not good enough. Stop interfering in our marriage." Richard leaned forward. "You think you're the first one we've had to handle like this? These people who try to take advantage of our family." He laughed. "Sarah will come home. She always does. Ask her about Jacob, her fiancé before you." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Sarah was engaged before she met you. A good guy, a doctor. We didn't approve of his background. It took us 6 months to make her realize he wasn't right for her. She broke it off and came running home to her daddy in tears." He smiled. "History repeats itself, son." On the drive home, I called Kate, Sarah's college roommate, and asked her about Jacob. "Oh my God," she said. "It was horrible. He was perfect for her, but her parents. They convinced her he was cheating. They fabricated evidence. He tried to tell her the truth, but she didn't trust him anymore." The pattern was clear now. It wasn't just about me. It was about control, total control over their daughter's life, and they had done it before. I didn't confront Sarah right away. Instead, I gathered all the evidence I could. I contacted Jacob, who was hesitant at first, but after I explained the situation, he sent me old emails between him and Sarah showing how her parents had sabotaged their relationship step by step. I reached out to other ex-boyfriends, former friends of Sarah's who had mysteriously drifted away. A pattern emerged. Anyone who encouraged Sarah's independence was gradually pushed out of her life. Jessica provided me with more surveillance videos showing Eleanor and Richard discussing their plans for us. "Once they divorce, we'll convince her to move back home," Richard said in one clip. "She can run the foundation, meet suitable men." I compiled all the evidence onto a single USB drive. Then I invited Mark and Jessica over for dinner, without telling Sarah that I was about to shatter her family's image. At dessert time, I connected my laptop to the TV. "There's something you all need to see," I said. For an hour, we watched the videos together. Sarah sat motionless, her face pale. Mark shook his head, whispering repeatedly, "Those aren't my parents." When it was over, Sarah turned to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I wanted you to see for yourself," I replied. "Everything. Not just what they did to me, but what they've been doing to you your whole life." Mark stood up, furious. "This is nonsense. These videos are doctored. My parents would never do this." Jessica grabbed his arm. "They did it to us too, Mark. You know why they suddenly started liking me after we had our son? Because a grandchild gave them leverage." The color drained from Mark's face. "You never told me." "I tried," she whispered. "You didn't want to listen." Later that night, Sarah came to bed and lay beside me. "I need time to process all this," she said softly. "But I believe you, and I'm sorry for doubting you." The next morning, Eleanor called. Sarah put her on speaker. "Sweetheart, I was thinking you might want to come stay at the house for a while," Eleanor said in a cheerful tone. "Your father and I are worried about you. Marriage is complicated, and sometimes a little time apart helps clear things up." "Mom," Sarah interrupted, "I saw the videos." A long silence. "What videos?" "The surveillance footage, where you tamper with Mason's glass, and where you and Dad plot to destroy my marriage." Another silence. "Whatever he showed you was manipulated. You know Mason has always been jealous of our family." "Stop." Sarah's voice was firm. "We are coming over tonight. The four of us, Mark, Jessica, Mason, and me. We are going to talk about this as a family. No more lies." After hanging up, Sarah turned to me. "They are going to deny everything. They'll try to turn the situation against you." I nodded. "I know. So what's our plan?" For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "I think it's time your parents met the real me. The one who doesn't just take pictures, but who knows how to tell a story." That evening, we arrived at Richard and Eleanor's house with my photography equipment. Mark and Jessica were already there, seated in the living room. Richard seemed confident. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding," he said. "No misunderstanding." I cut in, setting up my tripod. "I'm documenting this conversation for the family archives." Eleanor immediately protested. "This is a private matter." "Exactly," I replied. "A family matter, and I am part of this family, even though you did everything to change that." For 2 hours, we laid everything out. The spiked glass, the manipulation, Jacob, the other exes, the pattern that had shaped Sarah and Mark's entire lives. Richard and Eleanor denied everything, of course, accusing me of being unstable and manipulative. But with every denial, I played another video, showed another email. Their faces grew pale, their arguments crumbled. Finally, Sarah stood up. "I love you both. You are my parents, but what you have done is unforgivable. You no longer have the right to control my life." Mark nodded. "We are adults. We choose our partners, our futures." Eleanor began to cry, not out of remorse, but from the realization that she was losing control. Richard looked shell-shocked, unable to comprehend that his children were standing up to him. As we were leaving, I handed him a USB drive. "It has everything. Videos, emails, testimonies. It's yours." "What does this mean?" he asked suspiciously. "It means I won't ruin your reputation by releasing this. It would be painful for Sarah, and I would never do that to her." I paused. "But if you ever try to interfere in our marriage again, manipulate Sarah, or badmouth me, copies will be sent to everyone at your country club, your business partners, and your precious social circle." For the first time since I had known him, Richard looked at me with something resembling respect. "I underestimated you." "Yes," I replied simply. "You did." 6 months passed. Sarah and Mark started therapy to work through the damage caused by their parents' control. Eleanor and Richard kept their distance, occasionally sending texts but respecting the boundaries we had set. Then, during the holidays, they invited us to dinner. A fresh start, the invitation read. "Are we going?" Sarah asked. "They are still my parents, and they're trying." I agreed, harboring no illusions. Everything seemed normal when we arrived. Eleanor had prepared a feast. Richard was charming, asking about my photography projects with what seemed like genuine interest. After dinner, Richard invited me into his office. "I have a proposal for you," he said, pouring me a scotch. "I've been thinking about your career. Photography is nice, but you should diversify. I could bring you into my firm as a junior partner. The salary would be very attractive." I took the glass, but didn't drink. Why would you do that? Your family, he said smoothly. And I respect how you handled that unpleasantness. You protected my daughter by holding your ground. That's what a real man does. I set the glass down. I appreciate the offer, but no. His smile tightened. Mason, be reasonable. It's an olive branch. A way to move forward together. No, I repeated. It's another attempt at control. You can't buy me, Richard, and you can't stand that Sarah loves me the way I am. Don't be stupid, he hissed, the mask dropping. Everyone has a price. I stood up. That's where you're wrong. And that's why you will never understand your own daughter. I returned to the dining room, where Eleanor was showing photo albums to Sarah. Look at this, she was saying. You were so happy when you lived at home. Sarah caught my eye. She knew from my expression that something had happened. She stood up. Mom, Dad, she announced clearly. I have something to tell you. Everyone turned to her. We're expecting a baby. Mason and I. I'm 3 months pregnant. The shock on their faces was genuine. Eleanor reacted first, rushing toward her daughter with tears in her eyes. Richard walked over more slowly, glancing between Sarah and me. Congratulations, he said stiffly. Thank you, I replied. Then, in a low voice so only he could hear, this child will never be a pawn in your games. I promise you that. His face hardened, but he nodded once. He had gotten the message. On the drive home, Sarah squeezed my hand. They'll never change, will they? No, I answered honestly. But they're going to have to accept that we have. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from Richard's lawyer. Inside was the deed to our house, the one we had been renting until then, and legal documents establishing a trust fund for our unborn child. There was no note, no conditions, no strings attached. Just an irrevocable transfer of assets. It wasn't an apology. Richard wasn't capable of that. But it was an acknowledgement, perhaps the only one he could offer, that we had one. Our daughter was born in the summer. We named her Lily, in honor of my grandmother. When Eleanor and Richard came to the hospital, they brought gifts but kept a respectful distance. They cooed over the baby, took a few photos, and left without trying to give us parenting advice or financial lectures. Months passed. Our relationship with them stabilized, taking on a form of tense normalcy. They never apologized for what they had done, but they stopped trying to control Sarah's life or sabotage my career. One evening, as I was editing photos in my studio, Sarah walked in carrying Lily. My mother called, she said. She wants us to come over for Christmas. I looked up from my computer. What do you want to do? I think we should go, she replied. But on our terms. Which are? We stay at a hotel, not their house. We leave whenever we want. And no unsupervised time with Lily. I nodded. Sounds reasonable to me. She sat next to me, gently rocking the baby. You know, I used to think that being successful meant making my parents proud, getting their approval, meeting their expectations. And now, she looked down at our daughter, then at me. Now I know that success means making choices I can be proud of. It's about staying true to the people I love. 2 weeks before Christmas, a large envelope arrived from Richard. Inside was a glossy brochure, the annual report for his investment firm. My photographs were featured everywhere. Landscapes, portraits, architectural shots, all work I had done on my own terms, without his interference. There was a short message attached. Needed to hire the best photographer I know. Figured you'd want a copy. It was neither an apology nor a reconciliation. It was something else. Respect, perhaps, or at least the acknowledgement that I had succeeded on my terms, not his. I didn't call to thank him. We both knew it wasn't about gratitude. It was an acknowledgement of the new boundaries, of our new reality. In the spring, I opened my own gallery in downtown Asheville. At the opening, Sarah stood by my side with Lily on her hip. My parents had made the trip from Oregon. Friends and clients filled the space, admiring the shots I had taken over the years. Richard and Eleanor came, too, toward the end of the evening. They didn't stay long. Eleanor briefly held Lily under Sarah's watchful eye. Richard shook my hand, nodded at the photographs with genuine approval, and left without offering a single suggestion on how I should run my business. As we were closing the gallery that night, Sarah asked me, "Do you think they've changed?" I thought about the question for a long moment. No, I finally replied. But they've accepted that they can't change us. And sometimes, that's enough. Later, sitting on our porch watching the stars appear over the Blue Ridge Mountains, with Lily asleep upstairs, I understood something I had never clearly articulated before. I hadn't won by playing Richard and Eleanor's game. I had won by refusing to play it at all. I had held my ground, protected what mattered most, and built my life according to my own definition of success. Not with schemes or manipulations, but with honesty and quiet perseverance. In the end, that was the greatest revenge of all, living fully, on my own terms, with the family I love by my side. Comment. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. Walking away from unhealthy dynamics is never easy, but it is often the most necessary step for our own well-being. Setting firm boundaries does not make you a bad person. It simply means you respect yourself enough to protect the peace and harmony of your own life. You never have to lower your standards or play manipulative games to prove your worth to anyone. True success is found in living authentically and standing by the people who love you for exactly who you are. Healing from deep emotional wounds requires time, patience, and a lot of courage. I hope this message reminds you that you have the absolute right to define your own happiness. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, as I truly value your unique perspectives. I wish you all a beautiful week filled with clarity, gentle healing, and lasting peace. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.